Hey, Piping Pirate, how you doing? Sorry, clearing my throat. Bit of a frog in my throat this evening. Hey, Walter, thanks for joining. I just finished smoking an H. Upmann limited edition Cuban cigar from 2012, and it's kind of got me a little bit of a tickle. Wasn't the best smoke in the world. Wasn't terrible, but it's kind of setting my my throat off a little bit. Hi, Meeks. You were in hospital, Pirate. What was up? If that's not too personal a question. Uh-oh, that's not good. But I hope you're okay now. My grandmother had something along those lines, but she lived with it for a long time. Where is my power cable? There it is. Smoking Fireman, good evening. Hey Hector, how you doing? Yeah, I'm okay, Jimmy. Thanks for asking. He was threatening to come on, the dreaded lurgy, but that was through quite a few late nights, and I've managed to have reasonable night's sleep, a few nights' sleep since then. So besides for a little tickle brought on by a cigar I had before, I'm doing fine. I had a little kit this afternoon. Englishman Piper, good evening to you. So you're looking at surgery, Pirate? Mr. Kopecki, thanks for joining. Not smoking anything at the moment. I'm drinking some Earl Grey tea. Just waiting for some inspiration in terms of what to be smoking. So I guess you're looking at either a repaired valve or a valve replacement there, Pirate, are you? Well, I wish you well, Pirate. Hope that will sort itself out. Wasn't really too sure that I was going to come on tonight. Just wasn't really feeling it, to be honest, but I thought, seeing as it's a regular thing, I should come on for a little bit at least. We'll see how it goes. Had some interesting videos, my morning drive videos this week, some interesting topics of discussion. Was talking about it just before with Chad on Yardism. He's live at the moment, if anyone's interested in a good chat. Your favorite is Monte Cristo number 2. I would say about 2 years ago I was going through a lot of those. I had a box which I'd bought online, and they were really very, very nice. I got them, they were a couple of years old already by that time, and they were great. I'm assuming you're talking about Cuban number 2s, Walter, are you? Hey, Curmudgeon. Hey, Ben, thanks for joining. Yeah, I'm not really sure if I'm going to be on for too long tonight, but we'll see how it goes. Yeah, so the Monte Cristos, Walter? How many Penzance points, 1 to 10, would you give my video if you've seen it? I'm not too sure, to be honest, Meeks. When did you upload it? Oh, your video, your opening. Yeah, no, I did see that. I'll have to watch it again before I can give you some opinion. I've watched so many videos that it's difficult to remember them all. Yes, Art, Ben. These two, plus whatever else I can throw into your box, are on their way to you at some point when I next go to the post office. I decided to jar them up for you because they come in these plastic bulk bags which are never going to really hold the humidity well, and I figured why not, you know, give you a finished package. I took the label off the sticker, they came off really quite nicely, came off the bag, and I just thought it's a nice finished product there for you. And that one is going to Mike, Gamecock Piper, and there's a couple of other ones here. I think the Condor is yours as well, if I'm not mistaken. I think you asked for that. Don't remember. Got to look on my notes. Hey Tree, how you doing? Well, I've had the Coniston plug, and you know, off one smoke, it's really hard to have a real opinion. But it was not as offensive as other Lakelands have been to me, so that may have some longevity. And this is the Bosun plug. That's how much I took off the plug for me to try. So you've still got your 50 grams, don't worry. And this one also, it's got the Lakeland essence there straight away, but again, it's not as offensive as some, but it is Lakelandy. And my gut instinct is that I probably won't like this either, but I'm definitely going to give it a go. It's got plenty of moisture in it, so it should be okay in here for a while. So we'll definitely... Should I do that tonight? Should we smoke that? I'm drinking the right drink, that's for sure. Got some nice Earl Grey tea, which is floral in itself. Smoke them granny pants. It's a nice looking tobacco, that's for sure, I'll give you that much. Really nicely pressed. Granny knows things you never will, Hector, and I hope so too. I hope I know next to nothing about what Granny knows, especially anything in connection with her pants, that's for sure. Good evening, Joe Fish. Jim is in the house. So I'm going to break up that little bit of flake that I've got circumcised from the main block. And I guess there's no time like the present. Hi Sam, how you doing? Full rubber, okay. It's quite feisty stuff actually. It's quite chunky. It reminds me a little bit of McClellan's, the way their broken flakes are. It's really hard to break into small. Hi Sam. I know you like to get an immediate response to every one of your comments, but I'm afraid it doesn't always happen. Hey Aaron. This is courtesy of Ben, the Artful Codger. Well, it's not courtesy of him, it's courtesy of GQ Tobaccos, but I bought it for him. It's some bosun plug, and I've nicked a bit out of the plug, and I'm kind of trying it out. No, Sam, I'm just joshing with you. Chill. Don't worry. You're welcome. And I really enjoy your company. Yeah, absolutely, Sam. Can't always notice it straight away. You know, there's messages coming through on the screen, and I'm in the middle of, might be in mid-flow, but we get there. We get there. A little bit of conversation, that's all. So I'm trying to break it down as much as possible. Ben says that it really needs to be broken down. I think I'm going to give it a little bit of the blade as well. Yeah, me and Gordon, besides for the F word, we just think along the same lines. You know something, this Spyderco is phenomenal. I've got a fair few knives. I'm not a knife collector in any way, shape or form, but I've got, I don't know, maybe half a dozen. And I've got some I've got a particularly one which was custom made for me. It's a really nice knife, but I always turn to this one. Hi Cherry. Hey Chad. Hi Signalman. This is the one I had made for me. A very cool little knife. These little pins and things are custom made. It needs to be resharpened. It's got a lovely, I've forgotten what you call that now. Nice wood handle. Very nicely shaped. So you can really sort of push down on that and your finger fits in there beautiful. Jimping, yeah. When I first was sort of getting a couple of knives here and there, I did get up with all the terminology, but I've forgotten it now. I'm not into it at all, really. I've got the ones that I've got, and that's it. I don't really buy them anymore. But this one is just, it's fantastic. It came together with this leather sheath, and it's made by a guy here in the UK, Chris, I forget his name now, something or other. CSR is his initials. That's, you can see his logo there, nicely done. But I went for this small blade because here in the UK you're very limited what you can legally have. But I really like it. But as I say, when I want to cut something, yeah, it has to be really short. It has to be less than 3 inches, I think, here in the UK. And even this, I think, may well not be legal to walk around with because it's got a fixed blade. So you're allowed a folder. This is a UK PK, it's called. It's made specifically for the UK market. And it's fantastic, it really is. This one, there was a time when I walked around with it as well, but I don't really anymore. It's a great knife. It's loosened up sufficiently so I can open it one-handed. I don't close it one-handed usually, but it's great. Here again as well, it's got fantastic sort of, you keep your finger there, you can't close it over you, so you can't really hurt yourself. It's got a good solid click. You can't lock them, that's the whole point in the UK. You can't have any kind of locking mechanism on there, or any flick out mechanism. Any of that stuff is banned here in the UK. So you can have a basic folding knife, less than 3 inches, and so your typical pen knife that people will have will be a Swiss Army knife, that kind of thing. But this one I was taken with it because it has that sort of knife shaped look to it of a proper knife, rather than just a straight blade like a Swiss Army knife. So I really liked it. I think it was about 50 odd pounds, which was reasonable. The prices have gone up since as well. I've had this probably about 2.5 years now. Never had to sharpen it, never had to do anything with it. And as I say, I use it on all the boxes, box unopenings, and sometimes on heavier duty stuff, but it's just a great knife. There was some talk about Swiss Army knife pipe tools. Hi Boris. I think some people did speak to Swiss Army about making a limited edition run or something like that, but I think the answer that they got was that with their research on the pipe smoking market, they don't do runs of less than, I don't know what the number was at the time, maybe 50,000 or hundreds of thousands, but apparently it wasn't of interest to them because there just wasn't enough of a market. I did see something about it in the past, and also it's very possible they were being PC and didn't want to get associated with smoking. Since we're talking about knives, here's another one, which is still in its box. I don't use it really, but it is actually a very sharp knife. It's a CRKT, and it's a self-sharpening one. And as it goes in, it sharpens on. There's a little bit of a device inside there which sharpens the blade. You can hear it just as you close it over. Edgy, self-sharpening. I'd have probably given 1 or 2 of these away if it wasn't for the very strong, strict rules about sending the blades in the post. So, I mean, this particular one probably, because I don't use it, I would have probably given it away by now. I think I've got another 1 or 2 here. Here's a Swiss Army one. This one has a torch built in, but the battery's dead on it, so I have to change that. Well, this is a nice one. And there's your blade. I think Swiss Army do limited edition runs as well, but only ones that they particularly want to do, I guess. Here's another one which was made for me by, I forget his name now. He's a guy I used to post on YouTube. He does a lot of sort of repurposing stuff. This is some old guttering which he's shaped and melted into shape to make a sheath. And what he does was he would take old files, woodworking files and things like that, and which he'd get in the market for next to nothing. And then he'd make these handles with bits of wood which he could repurpose. And you can see there he's got some. He always left a bit of the filing on there so you could see what it was, give it a bit of character. It is quite sharp, but it's a bit of a beast. But it feels amazing. This handle, it weighs a fair amount, and he's done a great job on the handle. Some brass. But this is tucked away in a drawer. I never take it out. I don't know if my kids see it. It's actually quite sharp. I'm not a weapons man, generally speaking, to be honest, and this is, although I suppose I could make it work in the kitchen. That's not a bad idea, actually. Maybe I'll put it to work in the kitchen. But he's ground this down himself. Tree, you might know who this was. I can't remember his name now. Paul Turnock, that's it. There you go, popped right into my head. He does a lot of whittling, wood carvings. You know, takes branches, just twigs, and he makes some really, really pretty stuff. No website. No, he's just a guy who has a greenhouse, I think. Well, no, he has an allotment. He does a lot of this on his allotment. Yeah, but as I say, I'm not really a knife guy. Jack Daniels is in the house. Poof, as if by magic. Slurpy slurpy. I was just on Chad's channel before. We were talking about slurpers, and there I go slurping. I'm a hypocrite if nothing else. Well, I'm glad I'm your killer. Thank you for joining, Jack. Appreciate it. All right. Okay, pipe. Now, I do seem to remember that when I smoked Velvet, I did designate one of my pipes. I just don't remember which one it was. Oh dear me, which one was it? Good question. I don't know. So I'm going to use a different one. Let's have a little look-see. I think we're going to take one of these. This was a recent acquisition. This Leswood, I think I've shown it to you guys. Haven't smoked it a lot. Smoked it the other day, but still I need to exorcise its previous owner's affectations. Alright, I think we're going to go for this really nice pipe actually. I should really smoke it a whole lot more. It's a Jean Tête, Cumberland stem. Bought it for next to nothing on eBay. It's drilled perfectly. It's a St. Claude, comes from France. And it's a lovely looking pipe. I had a couple of these, and one of them I sold to the who was it? Sweet Chicken. That's who I sold it to. And you all know who I mean when I say that. Get the ugly Escorti, yeah, but not for something like a Lakeland. because that I wouldn't be able to exercise granny pants out of that. Yeah, this one does smoke very well. Road Glide Sally. I love the intro to your video. The sound of that startup on your motorbike is just phenomenal. It is. It does look a bit like a Savinelli. Is it Bing's Favourite or one of those kind of things? Hey Mitch. And Broom indeed. It's not. It's like it's an interesting start up to the way that I'm no motorbike man either. Tree. I'm not a motorbike man, but whenever I see a Harley here in London, which is not that often, there are plenty around, but you don't see them that often. And I'm kind of blown away by them. And when I do see one parked up or something, I'll always go around, have a look at it. As long as the owner is okay with it, or if he's not around, then I'll take some pictures. But this one, the way it starts, it just. I don't know if they all start that way, but it's got a certain hoarseness to it. It's got like a sore throat when it starts. There's a breathiness to it as it starts, and it's something like that. Oh dear, sound like a right Burke. Right. You're blown away every time you throw a leg over it. Well, that's certainly an interesting turn of phrase. Davey, good evening. Tonight I am once again entertaining Ben, the Artful Codger, with one of his favourite smokes, and mine likely not least favourite smokes. This is Bosun Plug. So, ergo, it's a Lakeland. So I'm doing this purely out of for entertainment value, because I'm all going to hate it. Because I'm definitely going to hate it. At least that's what my expectation is. No, it's definitely Artful Codger's fault. Blaming him 100%. Okay. Ah, hell. Oh, I forgot, January. Jack, you asked me a question, I think the other week, about cigars, didn't you? You asked me about easygoing cigars to start off with. I assume in Australia you have access to Cuban cigars, don't you? Well, I would certainly point you in the direction of one of my favourite brands, which is H. Upmann. H. Upmann are really easygoing. The most important thing is when you go into the shop to buy a cigar, is tell them what you want. Tell them that you want something mild, and when you smoke it, keep your cadence down as you would when you're starting. You know, in the beginning with pipe smoking, just take it slow, and leave as much of a gap as you can between draws, without letting it go out. And don't draw in too deep to start with, and just see how you go. Hi Dale. This is a knockoff ST DuPont from China, but they're fantastic. Very, very well made. I think I paid about $17 for it, and they're fantastic. I can't justify buying a real one. It works very well. It gives you the ping. about to have some bosun, absolutely, Hector. Ben is probably having some velvet. Yeah, you're probably right on that. Let's get this bosun plug lit, because Ben's got to go soon. At least that's what he said before I said I was going to smoke some bosun. Oh man, haven't you? Oh, for flip's sake. Whew. Seriously, Ben, I'm not joking. I haven't even lit it, and literally just touched flame to tobacco, and I've already got a mouthful of granny pads. It's not taking very nicely to the flame, I'll say that. Maybe I should have left it out longer. I think that's the name of his Harley Davidson. Either that, or it's a name is given to how he gets his leg over the motorbike. Here's my electric glide. Just watch me glide into that saddle. Yeah, cheers, Jack. Perhaps it will happen. I assume you're still coming over here to the UK at some point. Oh, I need to refill this. Back to the trusty old zipper. See you, Jack. Well, that initial blast of Lakeland has subsided somewhat. You don't get that real heavy blast once it's lit. But I think Lakelands generally, you either love it or you don't. It's a real Marmite kind of tobacco. I think I'm trying to remember if it was Ladon Briarblade who made it, or Danny Shaw. I don't remember which. It was one of those two. And my gut feeling is that it was Danny, but just by the type of wood that I've seen him use for his tampers before. This one, I'm trying to remember, this is a solid brass one. I think I got it on eBay actually. And it's 07, which I assume is the year. Ladon Mott Briarblade. Ennerdale actually, out of all of the Lakelands that I've tried, Ennerdale is probably, for me, to my particular palate, it was the nearest to being palatable. For me, the flavours in there have a little bit of an almond essence to it, and it was more like one of these This one was gifted to me. I think it was Danny Shaw who made it, but this is going back a couple of years. There you go. It is Almondy, yeah. Yeah, so that one I found was much more palatable. It was more of run-of-the-mill flavours that I could associate and relate to. And just Lakelands I just don't relate to, really. Clove? I haven't got clove so far. And now that you've said it, I'll probably get it. Ennerdale, not Erinmore, Ennerdale. Erinmore is not a Lakeland. Erinmore is just a light aromatic, which I really, really enjoy. It will ghost the pipe, yeah. I'm hoping it won't ghost it after just one smoke. See, the thing that I have with Lakelands is that initial blast of Lakeland flavour I don't enjoy, generally. I mean, it's not something which I'm going to sort of spit out, if you like. It's not something which it is like 100% offensive, but I just don't enjoy it. And what happens is that after a while, the Lakeland essence settles down a bit, and then it becomes, I wouldn't say boring, but I just don't get it, and that's just, you know, just me, I guess, because people absolutely love it all over the world, especially the older people. Right, Ben? I would say that the Erinmore does age well. This particular tin, I think, has aged very, very well. Erinmore. It's got a lovely richness to it. I don't know when this is from. I was guessing 2008. These are the numbers that are on it, but I may be wrong. It might be 2012. I guess that could be, it's quite simple to be 2012. It's not bad, this Bosun. I would say it's not a very heavy Lakeland. It certainly wanes a little bit quite quickly. But once that goes, you're left with a mild fruity flavour and tobacco, but it's just not to my particular palate. There's not much going on really for me on this. Sure, you can age it. Just put it into an airtight container and you're done. Meeks. That's what these are all about, these jars. There's rows and rows of jars, and that's all tobacco, and it will age. If you leave it, it will age. Erinmore Balkan, I've never had that. Yeah, Bob's Chocolate is an interesting one. Bob's Chocolate is a really interesting tobacco. There was a while when I was smoking that an awful lot. And that one's got Latakia in it as well. And it's not as floral, no. I actually didn't really, when I smoked it, it didn't seem to me a Lakeland because it's so I'm not sure if it's the Latakia that overpowers it, but I just didn't perceive it as a Lakeland. It was just an interesting flavour. I guess so. Or you could just leave it out and it'll dry to a tinder, which I suppose could be rehydrated, but certainly wouldn't want to age it that way. I could see why you'd say Aaron Moore would remind you of a chewing gum. It's a fruity chewing gum. I just really like Aaron Moore. I think it's a very underrated, undersmoked tobacco, because I've said this many times, as Hector will testify. To me, it's a straight Virginia it's a light aromatic trying to be a straight Virginia, because it's just got the really lightest touch with some aromatics, some fruity aromatics. I personally get a pineapple flavour, a mild pineapple flavour. Some people don't. But I just think it's great, and I recommend it to all new pipe smokers whenever they ask. It's a great way to start. It's been a while since I've had Aaron Moore Flake. This particular tin is Aaron Moore Mixture, the one I'm smoking at the moment. Not right now, but the one that I'm getting through. And happily, it's a 100-gram tin, so that will last me a while. I've jarred it up somewhere. These are nice sized jars as well. In the shops that I buy these mason jars or Kilner jars, they always seem to come up with different sizes the whole time. I wish they would keep them static, so I could, so my shelf could look uniform to some extent. Yeah, no, I would agree with you, Hector. It's a really nice smoke, and I think it does. Some people say that the flake is better. It's been a long time since I've smoked the flake. I do have a tin of Aaron Moore. I'm not sure which one it is though, if it's the flake or the mixture, in my cellar somewhere. But I'm not going to dig it out now. Amphora Virginia is a lovely smoke as well. The pint-sized jars, yep. And that's my main staple of jars. That's the ones that I've got the most of. And yeah, 4 ounces goes in them very well. I can squeeze a lot more in than that, but sometimes I think to myself, if I squeeze in too much, it's kind of suffocating the tobacco. I did that with, when I did that mix of Escudo and Dunhill Navy rolls, I mixed up quite a bit of it. And here you can see one of them. I've got 2 jars like this. One of them I'm working my way through, and this one is, you can see there's a little bit of condensation on the inside there. This was April 18. Oh, I thought it was July. So this is going on about 9 months already. The whole exercise has been, so far, quite a disappointment for me. It really didn't work out. I didn't get what I wanted out of this, but maybe in the future. So I'm just letting it sit. Toasted tomato soup sandwich. Amphora Virginia to me is also a very underrated tobacco. Full aroma is as well, but full aroma again, because it's aromatic, it'll be, your personal taste. But in terms of a pure Virginia, the Amphora Virginia is very good. It's really sweet. There must be some kind of sweetener in there with quite a heavy hand, so it may not be a flavouring but a sweetener. It's good quality broken flake, but broken into almost a ribbon but not quite. And I really like that kind of presentation. All of the M4s seem to have that kind of presentation. I think it's made by McBaron, if I'm not mistaken, and it's really good. I got a pipe from father as a birthday present yesterday. It's an EWA pirate pipe, shape 129. The building grain are great. The only thing is, not a fan of it that much. I saw you posting a similar message on John Bearded Welshman's called something else now, his channel, of course. Should I send it free of charge without receipt at the B&M owner has noted before? But I feel horrible wanting to change the pipe because of the shape, as it was a gift from my dad. Well, if you haven't smoked it yet, just if you're going to get another one that you do like, it's also from your dad. I'm sure your father would much prefer that you have one that you want to smoke rather than just be stuck with something that you don't like. Talk to him about it. Tell him. I'm sure that'll be the first thing he'll say. Go change it. Does your father smoke as well, George? Hi, Scott-free. Just trying a bit of the retrohale on this bosun plug. Yeah, I think so, Quaker. I think that's a fair point. I think, especially when you're in the hobby as a hobby, and if you're cellaring tobaccos, or if you want to put some stuff on display, or you just want to, especially when you're a new smoker, you just want to have a tin. So you automatically head for the tins. And I think that a lot of, see, the pouch tobacco harks from the original style of smoking, where people just had either one or two blends and they smoked them day after day, pipe after pipe, and they'd go through a packet in a short amount of time. And there was no need for cellaring, there was no need for jarring up, and they would just smoke through their pouch in no time at all. And it's basically, the shape of the pouch is the same as the pouches that you'd buy in a shop, like this, and I'm not sure which came first, whether the pouches that you buy tobacco in are made to mimic those kind of pouches, or vice versa. But nowadays, well, here in the UK, Ben, now McBaron are pretty much pouching everything. When I buy the McBaron tins, I buy overseas. And you can only get a few of the McBaron blends here. A lot of the aromatics are not allowed anymore. Hey Cal Delta, thanks for joining. So the pouches, a lot of people also say that there's a greater percentage of humescence added to keep the tobacco humidified for longer, because the pouches are not as airtight as a tin. They add more humescence in it to keep it humidified longer. So a lot of people say that the flavour of a pouch tobacco compared to the identical tobacco from a tin is different. Jim, this is a George rather. This is a Jean Tête from France. It's a Jean Tête St. Claude, which I actually bought on eBay. I think I paid about £40 or £50 for it. Really nice grain on it. Nice brindle stem or Cumberland stem. Classic shape. I guess there must have been some kind of sand pit or something on there, so they rusticated that. But I absolutely like this pipe very, very much, and I think I'm going to keep it up front and central, so I smoke it more often now. Hey Harriet, how are you doing? Yes, I guess you'd call it a billiard. I don't know, some people might say because of the slanted walls slightly it might be an apple shape. I'd call it a billiard myself, with a very, very slight bend to it, curve to it. This shape is probably my favourite kind of shape. Anything which is straight or nearly straight at the moment is my favourite style of pipe. It's got a fairly decent retrail, this Bosun plug, but right now it's actually quite linear, the flavours. The Lakeland is kind of in the background. It's there, but it's not there, if that makes any sense. Yes, indeed. Jean St. Claude was certainly the hive of pipe making back in the day. And some really good videos on YouTube if you search out St. Claude pipes. Boris, logic would say not to trust it, but I must be honest, I've got some Cellaring silver flake, which is sealed in the bag, but it's not even sealed. I don't even think the bag is sealed, it's just folded over, and it's absolutely fine. It's been sitting in my cellar for, I don't know, maybe a year without any issues. But don't take my word for it. I mean, if you take the cellophane bag out of the tin and just feel it, if it feels crispy, then you probably want to rehydrate it and put it in a jar, yeah. Silver flake, I've not really got it yet. I've got an open tin, there's one of those silver tins, and I've got a sealed one. And so far it hasn't rocked my boat. Hey Steph, how you doing? When's your drawing, Harriet? I saw your video earlier on, cutting up your strips. Nice, 206 entries. Cool. Yeah, the chances are Tree's going to have a pipe. If you want to know about a pipe, Tree will have at least a couple of them. Harriet, I was talking about your original idea for a video, and I said it was a bit difficult to do that. I think mine was equally difficult. And I was being a bit hypocritical because I got a very, well, not a very low entry list, but a relatively low entry list. I think I made my door a little bit too challenging for some people. Just have to make it easy next time. I guess the next one will be, yeah, okay, whatever. I'm not 100% sure, Steph. It's either Ladon or it's Danny Shaw. My gut feeling is telling me Danny Shaw, but it could very well be Ladon. I've had tampers from both of them. Actually, it might be Ladon. I think Danny's one was bigger. I'm trying to see if I've got one here from either of them. Another one? No. Oh, I was showing you the knife earlier on from Paul Turnock. He made this tamper as well. Also a lovely tamper, nice piece of wood, very nicely shaped. And he doesn't have a lathe, believe it or not. He doesn't have a lathe. This is all done by hand. Good evening, Elwood. And this one was made by Tree, none other. Personalised BPR UK. With a nice 15mm stop end for a pipe. I assume that's a pipe stop end there. Tree. This is still my favourite tamper. You've seen this before, I'm sure, many of you. I never used it. I don't think I've ever used it. So also BPR UK. And this was made to match my Savinelli. This was made to match my Savinelli 606. Did an awesome job. Very similar rustication. Colouring is great. Because it's so nice, I just don't use it. Bit silly, really. It's been stuck in the bag since then. Rough works indeed. I see you know your carvers there, Aaron. Rick Ruff. Did my package arrive? Which package is that, Harriet? Oh no, it didn't. Not so far. That's a good idea, Ben. That's a very good idea. When did you send it, Harriet? When you get a second, I don't know if you already did send me the tracking number, but if you wouldn't mind sending that to me, I'd appreciate it. And if you have sent it, then I'll look it up. Just let me know. So my little journey into pipe carving is moving along. I mentioned in one of my videos that I've gone ahead and ordered a workbench. Actually, I might be able to show you a picture of it. There it is. That's the workbench. It's just under 2 meters wide, about 1.7 meters, and that hopefully will arrive on Monday with a bit of luck. And I've ordered a sample pack of dies, wood dies, so that's going to be fun experimenting with that. I've got the briar. I bought a drill press, although I know that I probably should have gone straight to the lathe, but I just don't want to invest in a lathe until I know what I'm getting. And I've made an appointment with Mike Billington, Blake Marbriers. I'm going to see him on Tuesday, all being well. Made with Canadian wood in China, very possibly. It's beech, the wood it's made with beech. Thanks, Elwood. And I bought a few little tools, some metal brushes and stuff like that for brushing the top of the plateau blocks. Steph, I think that's a luck of the draw, to be honest. I'm surprised that they didn't get it. Generally speaking, thank God so far I've always had good success with packages coming from the States and sending to the States. I've sent a lot of packages overseas, and I think in all the time that I've been on the YTPC, I think only one package has gotten lost on the way to the US, and that was sent to Caden Boulogne. And I think the reason why it got ripped up was because it had a lighter in it. He was at the time saying that he liked the look of the Danish pipe shop lighters, so I bought him one and sent it along with a load of other stuff, and it all got nicked. I was pretty gutted at the time. I sent him another package, which he did get. Yeah, it's very gut-wrenching, Steph, especially when you put personal stuff in there. You'd like an oompole. Well, I think bent pipes will be a challenge and something which I'll have to try and error. Thanks, Harriet, I appreciate that. I'm generally speaking, when it comes to bent pipes, I've been very frustrated with the quality of drills that I've received in some of my pipes. I recently had a pipe which I had to return to the place that I bought it from, and I was very lucky that they gave me a full refund. But some of the drilling is pretty shocking, and it may well be that when I start to do bent pipes, if I start to do bent pipes, I might end up having to do the same because it's so difficult. So easy for me to talk, but when it comes to it in practice, I may well face the same challenges. I'm sure I will. And that's why with a lot of bent pipes, what you do see often, take this one, which you could call an oompole. I think he calls it a calabash, but same kind of idea. But generally speaking, let's find something straight. So imagine this has got a really long. In actual fact, I can show off another tool that I bought. Yay! I'm very professional, people. You can't call yourself a pipe maker if you haven't got a caliper. Right, so there you go, we can measure the bowl with this little tool. Right, so this one is 47.6. So it goes, I don't know if you can see it, it goes to around there. Okay. So if that's the bottom of the bowl, roughly, you have to get a straight line of sight with a drill when you're drilling it. Well, if you imagine that there, you're not getting it really, are you? You're hitting the top of the bri there. So what you often see is that the drill hole actually starts right on the edge, like that, and that's how they will get to the bottom of the bowl. And then you'll find that often it will have some kind of decoration on there to cover up for the fact that they've drilled. So if you look at this one, that's been added, and when you look at it, it looks perfectly circular and there's nothing wrong with it. But if I was to take this off and that off, I guarantee you that it will be over there. There's no other way of doing it. I mean, there are some pipe makers who are even drilling from here to the bottom and then meeting it there and then filling that, closing it up and filling it. But you know, I'll find out, I guess, when I make a start on those. Let's see how we go. It's all good fun. I've got myself a few of these 9mm pegs, so I'm hoping to get some degree of skill at converting a pipe myself, so I won't have to rely on sending it to other people. I've ordered some drill bits as well, so I'm hoping that I'll be able to do this. I've always been worried about making sure that I drill dead center, so that when I reconnect the stem to the pipe that they're not off. That's my real biggest worry, but I guess practice makes perfect. I've also ordered a cross vise, which I won't be able to explain until I've actually got it and set it up on the bench. And the reason why I went for a cross vise rather than a basic vise, yeah, use a Kerr's drill bit, is so the cross vise, essentially, what I wanted, the reason, I don't know if it'll work in practice, that's just in my head, it's what made sense, is that if I've got, the biggest problem with pipes, sorry, not the biggest problem, the biggest challenge is to make sure that your draft hole meets the bottom of the chamber, and in the center and at the bottom. And I was just trying to think in my head the best way to do that without getting too technical. You know, I see some of the drawings that people make on their pipes. The geometry that's being used there is quite advanced sometimes. So what I wanted to do was, with the cross press basically you can adjust in both directions. And what I wanted to do was to have the pipe in the vise, bring the drill bit down into the center to where I'm doing the chamber, and that would be fine. Then I wanted to just shift it along whilst on the cross press, shift it along, and the drill bit is to bring it down alongside. I'm probably not making a lot of sense here. There we go. So this is a kit pipe which I bought recently, but essentially what I wanted to do was to have the drill bit in the drill press and line it up whilst this was in the press, slide it along on the vise, bring the drill press down next to it so that I can be sure exactly where the positioning is, set it, and then bring it back so that I know exactly where I'm. So, and the same would be when I turn it up to do the draft hole. That's what I've got in my mind. Whether it actually works or not, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not a great mathematician. I never was good at maths, and yeah, but we'll see. It's all fun, and trial and error is the name of the game, and persistence, and hopefully I won't lose my rag when I'm doing it. But I'll hopefully have some time to really get stuck into it, because my wedding season is over at the moment. I haven't got anything lined up in the near future for a good few weeks, and I want to. Hi Joshua, and I want to get all my processing done, all the weddings that I've still owe people their pictures for, get them done, and then and really get stuck into this pipe making malarkey. See how it goes. Piper64, I think he's been posting on my videos and talking about making pipes with a drill press, and I think I have checked him out. So what you guys been getting up to? What are you smoking today? Yeah, I'm really excited to go to Mike. I hope it still works out. You know, my diary can change from day to day. I get booked sometimes, literally from one day to the next. Last week I did a wedding for a friend of mine who's a photographer who was laid up. He wasn't well, and literally like 2 days before he booked me to do the wedding, which is obviously I've done a lot of weddings, so it's kind of, it doesn't faze me. But when I'm sort of gearing up to do a wedding, it's I tend to, in my mind, I try to visualize things, and for a few days beforehand I sort of work myself up towards the wedding. So getting one literally from one day to the next, you don't always have that. But and I always say to myself that if I ever get to the point when I go to a wedding and I'm not nervous and I have no sort of butterflies in my stomach, that's when I'll start to worry, because I really, when I get to a wedding, I really sort of try to gear myself up for it, and it is a challenge. Every single wedding is a challenge, as this last wedding was. It was quite a challenge, because if you watched my video afterwards, it was interesting because the groom disappeared for like an hour when he was supposed to be having portraits and pictures after the religious ceremony. Yeah, he just disappeared for an hour. Which was interesting to say the least. Josh, I can always trust you to bring the caliber of conversation and write down. Just kidding. No, it wasn't cold feet. I just think he just wasn't interested in having pictures done. It was quite a religious ceremony, and but in the end we managed. Yes, Josh. But they were very nice people, and overall enjoyed myself at the wedding. And it wasn't too late. No, what am I talking about? They originally said they wanted me to finish at 12 o'clock. The wedding went on till 2, and in the end they told me to stay. So I got a bit of overtime on there as well, so I charge extra after 12 o'clock, after midnight. Yeah, well, smoking weed would do that to you. Not that I know, of course. Well, I had all my equipment set up. I had basically what I do is, for 80% of the wedding, I have off-camera flashes, which is flash guns, which are basically on lightweight stands. But for the family photos, for the bride and groom shots, I do some sort of casual shots as well of the bride and groom, but when I'm doing the formal portraits, I use studio lights with umbrellas and soft boxes and that kind of thing, and some backgrounds and so on. And so for that, I'm set up and I'm basically raring to go. I want to get that under my belt because those shots are important. It's the stuff they'll put in their albums and so on, and it's really important because if I don't have those in the bag, there's a very important section missing from the overall package. And we're all standing around like lemons waiting for this guy to turn up, and everybody's phoning and trying to find out where he is, and to this day I still don't know where he went. I just know that an hour later the father of the bride was just standing around like everybody else waiting. So I did pictures of the bride with her family and so on, which was a bit weird after the ceremony not to have the groom there, but I took what I could, and then after an hour the father of the bride said, "Pack up, no point standing here." The evening dinner was in a separate venue. It was like a 20-minute drive away, and it had just started snowing heavily as well. And I've been in those kind of situations, and we were all getting rather nervous because if it would have settled the snow, we would have got stuck. Traffic just snarls up to a standstill once the snow hits in London. We're not geared up for it at all. So the father of the groom said, "Pack your gear and just make your way to the hall, and we'll try and catch a few shots in the hall." So that's what I did, and literally as I put my last bit of gear into my car, the groom turned up. But I just jumped in my car and I went. I certainly wasn't going to unpack and reset everything up. There's a lot of gear when I set up for a studio shoot. There's a lot of gear there. I'm effectively setting up a studio on location, and I work on my own. I've set that up from day one when I first started doing photography. I considered having hired help, but it's never been good, you know. And I've always ended up, I've set up my system and everything that I use, the equipment that I use, so that it's doable by me on my own. But it does take time, and there's a lot of gear, so I certainly wasn't going to pull it all out of the car again and set it up. So I went to the hall, got myself ready over there, and in the end I managed to get a few shots of them in one of the side rooms. It wasn't as good as it would have been. I didn't have the studio lights. I had my sort of portable lighting setup, which is just fine. But it's they were happy with it, because clearly the groom just wasn't that interested. Anyway, that was that. The upside of it was that because I was doing it on behalf of another photographer, all I'm doing is handing him over the raw files, and I don't have to do the processing. I've pretty much been paid. There's a little bit of a balance to pay, but essentially I've been paid, and that's it. I don't have to worry about it anymore. So that's my kind of job. I'm really happy to be able to do jobs like that. So I hope he'll be happy with the result, and we'll see how we go. Photography at weddings is very challenging, because when you turn up on the day, you don't know what you're going to get. I've had some real shockers, and I've had some sublime experiences. I think it's difficult for everybody. It's a stressful time, you know. Although it's the most important and supposed to be the happiest day of your life, I think it's also one of the most stressful days of your life. I remember being a groom myself, and I remember when my son got married and when my daughter got married. It's stressful for everybody, and you know, I think it's equally stressful for the bride as it is for the groom. It's a stressful day for everybody, and sometimes which is why I make a very, very strong point of meeting the families beforehand, even if they're not that bothered. I just make it an absolute sort of principle to meet them beforehand, to meet the bride, the parents, the groom if I can. Sometimes a lot of the weddings that I do, the groom is a resident abroad, and so I don't often have the opportunity, but I always ask for a picture beforehand so that I can visualize in my mind the type of shots that I'll be needing to do. Sometimes you'll get a bride and groom who are 2 feet apart in height, and that's something you have to work on in order to make the pictures palatable. You know, there's no point taking pictures of people side by side and one of them is 2 feet higher than the other, so you've got to structure and compose the shots in a way which looks attractive. I don't have a wedding shot page, so to speak, just simply because of it's people's personal stuff, which I don't know, I just never have. I can show you some of the pictures very quickly, unofficially. I've shown some of these before. This one was done at night, and this is a good example of my lighting setup. In order to get a nice sort of effect, I'll just turn some of the lights off here. See, these are very traditional kind of weddings. I don't know how well it's going to be reproduced on the screen. I think the camera's overexposing them, but the camera of my phone, on these live ones, it doesn't seem to, I can't control it. Yeah, very classic shots. Something that you would appreciate, Ben. The challenge here is the lighting. It's pitch black and the camera can hardly focus. And I'd have probably had somebody, one of the kids, one of the family members, shining a torch on the subject so that the camera could focus. But this is all about the lighting on the side. There's a light behind her over there. There's a light on the right-hand side. There's a light to my left. There's probably about 4 lights on her. Portable. That kind of thing. Off-camera flashes. That's a similar shot in colour. And this one I did a bit of processing on the sky, and yeah, it came out really nice. I was very happy with the results. That's a fairly classic kind of shots set there. Here's another one. It's a nice shot. Bit of action from the veil. Well, Steph, you would know about whether it would make a good painting or not. But the interesting thing is, as professional an approach that you might have, you are totally reliant on your subject. So kind of what I was saying earlier on is that when you come to a wedding sometimes, I remember I had a wedding where I think the bride and groom were slightly older than you might otherwise expect, and the two families, the bride's family and the groom's family, were just the two families were just miles apart. They weren't talking. I don't know what happened in terms of this couple getting together, and whether there was obviously some argy-bargy between the families. But they literally were not talking to each other, the two sides. The young couple were obviously in love and happy and delighted to be getting married, but the two families just were not talking to each other. One of the mothers was clearly a bit of a battle axe, and nothing could please her. And I remember that day I literally ended up being a counsellor and just doing the best that I can to hold things together, because it was literally getting ridiculous. But thankfully the day went okay, got some nice pictures, and we even had them talking to each other a little bit by the end of the day, and I thought, hello, I should be a counsellor, not a photographer. But no, really, it's when you, every single wedding is different, and sometimes you can have the most sort of stunning couple, both bride and groom, but they're just not cooperative. I was once taken down to Bournemouth, down by the coast, the Dorset coast, and the wedding was in a nice hotel. The scene was set, you know, it should have been a beautiful wedding. Beautiful grounds, lovely gardens, and we were, you know, I wanted to take the bride and groom out to take pictures in the gardens. And the groom, I don't know if he had some issues, but he just wasn't interested. He said, "I don't want any pictures." And I looked at the bride and I said, kind of quizzically, like, "For real? That's what I'm here for." Anyway, he really wasn't interested, but he did me a huge favour and let me take a few shots. And then afterwards, and this is what my worry always is, is that after, you know, sometimes I'll take a few months to get the pictures processed, depending on how busy my diary is. And a few months down the line, everybody's forgotten what happened on the day, and they say to me, "Well, where's the bride and groom shots? You've only got 5 shots. Where's the rest of the shots?" And if I tell them, "Well, the groom wasn't up to it," they'll just laugh at me. So whenever I have that kind of experience, I've learnt from that, is on the day to go to the person who booked me, usually the mother of the bride or mother of the groom or whoever it might be, and sometimes the bride or groom themselves. That would make it certainly awkward. But in this particular case, I went to the mother right at the end of the wedding, and I wouldn't do it during the wedding because that would just put a sour taste to everything, and that would be unprofessional. But I went up to her and I said, "I just want you to know, putting it on record, fantastic time, it was a great wedding, thank you very much, but if you see fewer than you'd expect pictures of the bride and groom, the reason is the groom wasn't interested. You can ask your daughter and she'll confirm that." And I didn't have any issues afterwards with that particular one. That was a very, very important lesson that I learnt on that wedding. And of course you then have some weddings where there are some medical issues. 2 particular weddings that I can remember: Hi Geek Piper, hi Rylan. Sorry, I'm kind of sort of muttering on here, so if somebody's popped in and I haven't acknowledged it, my apologies. And if I'm boring you, please do tell me. I've kind of got into a wedding theme here. So there was one particular wedding that I remember going to, working at, and during the religious ceremony, especially in Jewish weddings, in Orthodox Jewish weddings, it's a very serious moment, it's a very highly charged moment, and it's religion based, so it is a serious time, and usually both bride and groom will be very focused, you know, possibly eyes closed, and just really pretty serious. And the groom was just standing, just sort of looking around, taking in the scenery, and just completely seemed unfocused on what was going on. And I was really concerned about it. But one thing I've learnt is it's absolutely none of your business. You get on with your job and be professional, and that's what I did. And I was very, very sad to hear about a month later that they'd split up already, and that this boy had some issues, which is very sad. On another occasion, I had a wedding here in London, and the groom was just on the attack. He was, both myself and the videographer, he was just attacking us all the time. Not physically, but just whatever we asked him to do, no, not interested. I remember setting up the big family shot, and you know the big family shot takes time to set up. And we were in the back garden of somebody's house. It was a big garden, and we'd set up this picture, and imagine, I would say there was probably maybe 50, 60, 70 people in this picture, a big family picture. And just as we're about to finish setting it up, the groom steps out from the centre and he says, "I want it on that side of the garden." And everybody's incredulous. You know, we've spent the last 10 minutes setting up the picture, and he just walks off and he says, "No, I want it on that side of the garden." And I said to him, "No, I'm not doing it over there. This is where the picture's going to happen." And his mother's told him to damn well get back into his place. Sorry for the expletive. And he did. But he was very sort of aggressive for most of the wedding. And I said to the videographer at one point during the wedding later on, and I said to him, "Are you seeing what I'm seeing here? That there's an issue." And he said, "Yeah, absolutely." I remember at the end of the wedding going to the mother of the bride. The bride was the sweetest girl that you could meet. She was good looking, but sweet natured. She was just such a lovely person, such a lovely soul, and which is what made it all the more tragic for me, because I really worried about what the future would hold for her, and whether this guy would be a nasty piece of work to her. And the sad thing as well was that these kids, their families were the best of friends, and it was kind of possibly something which they'd kind of spoken about in the past, and it was probably a dream come true for the parents, for the two families to join through the marriage of their children. Anyway, at the end of the wedding, I went to the mother of the bride, and I didn't say anything too obvious, but she kind of acknowledged it, and she must have been really worried as well. Anyway, long story short, they also got divorced about 2 months later, and it turned out that he suffered from bipolar disorder, which can't blame him for that, but I just felt so gutted for this bride. Such a beautiful bride, beautiful person, beautiful soul, beautiful spirit, and to be crushed like that, I just felt so sorry for her. And I kept in touch, just try to sort of every so often just to say something encouraging, because I just felt terrible. But I did say to her, next time round I'll give her a discount. I'm not sure that she's got married yet since, or if she's in any kind of relationship. But it was really very sad. It was very sad. But that's really just the exception to the rule. The vast majority of weddings are fantastic events. I really do my best to get involved and to get into the sort of the festive spirit of it. I try to get involved. I try to, although I don't have the ability to sort of really get involved with the dancing and all of that kind of thing, because I'm walking around with the camera, but I just try to just get into the spirit of it all. And that generally makes all the difference. Absolutely, Hector. As I said, you can't blame him for that. But on the day we didn't know that, and on the day he was just being a really nasty piece of work, and I just couldn't help feeling sorry for the bride. I know other people with bipolar, and I know that there is certainly part of that is the aggression is just well, I don't know much about bipolar itself. I just know some people who have it, so I can't claim to know much about it. But there is a certain, I don't want to call it evil, but it certainly comes across that way. And I don't know what it is and what bipolar does to a person. So you've got that kind of Jekyll and Hyde kind of situation going on. Bipolar, it's like two characters. Tree, that doesn't surprise me at all. I guess your wedding dress was white, Tree, was it? If you want to read a good book, Steph, I don't know if you're into biographies or autobiographies. One of my favorite autobiographies, it was Billy Connolly's autobiography. I'm a big Billy Connolly fan. Very sad to see him suffering and going downhill. But when he wrote the book, I think he was kind of still in his prime. Just a fantastic read. So I'd certainly recommend that book. Some autobiographies are really quite boring, and just an exercise of self-aggrandizement, but this one is really fantastic. Yeah, Fireplug, no fun at all. I absolutely sympathize with you there. It's really no fun at all. It's almost like, and again, don't take offense, I'm saying this as a layperson. I have no real in-depth knowledge about bipolar, but the experience that I've had on the surface, superficially, as a person witnessing it, was that each of us has an innate Jekyll and Hyde. I suppose you could call it the good inclination and the evil inclination. And it seems that as a person observing, not as a person knowing, but as a person observing, it looks like the evil is kind of taking control of that person at that particular time, and it seems like it's just pure evil. And in all my experience in life, I don't think I've ever come across an evil person. Some people, they not pure evil. It's some people you might see, some people who have gone through, really tough lives and perhaps not as successful as they might be. But it's very rare to come across somebody who's really evil. And you get some of these mass murderers and people who do terrible, heinous things to other human beings. Those people are evil. And you could argue that even those people, there's a reason why they've become that evil, or they've got some mental issue. But pure evil, I think, thankfully, maybe I'm cloistered and I haven't seen it, but maybe I've been lucky. But I haven't. It's very rare to see pure evil, not in day-to-day society. But when you see somebody who's got bipolar, you see hints of that. You see that, put it this way, you see the potential in a human being to be evil. And just for the sake of it, I remember there was a distant cousin of mine. I remember when I first got married, and when you're in the flush of marriage, right in the beginning, you're quite sensitive to personal questions and things like that. Certainly in my circles, because there was no intimacy before marriage. And I remember this guy who wasn't married himself. He was older than me. I remember he came to my office once, and he's a cousin that I hadn't seen in many years. He lived abroad and so on. And he came into the office just for a visit, and he starts asking me all these kind of personal questions about the intimacy between husband and wife, and I was very uncomfortable, very, very uncomfortable. And I just dodged the questions. Basically, it's none of his business, obviously, but it was just very weird. And then I found out afterwards that he too suffered with bipolar, and essentially the inhibitions go. Sometimes we all have really crazy thoughts. Sometimes you can. Who was there? A comic I was listening to recently. I think it was Bill Burr. Bill Burr, a fantastic comedian. And he was talking about, I think it was his wife or something like that, or maybe a previous girlfriend. And he was saying something along the lines, there's times when you just want to mush their face into the ground, that kind of thing. But as a normal human being, you don't do that. You might have wild thoughts going through your mind, but your sensibility... Good night, Sam. Thanks for joining. Your sensibilities take over, and you control, and you just carry on with your normal life without doing those crazy things. And I think to some extent we all have that, but our sensibilities of normality keep us on the straight and narrow. And I guess people with bipolar, that whole veil of restriction, that inhibition, is just removed. It's gone. And whatever is on the other side, if you've got a fence in the middle, on one side is good, the other side is evil, that fence is gone, the good is out of the picture, and all you're left with is that evil. Evil is not a nice word. I shouldn't really use the word evil, but certainly sort of the darker side of human nature. The brakes fail, absolutely. That's a good way of putting it. But I think we all have that potential, and I guess, you know, upbringing has a lot to do with it, but certainly we're all born innately with a certain braking system, if you like, a buffer which protects us from that darker side coming out. And where, excuse me, excuse me just a second, something went down the wrong way. Just a second. And when if you like, the electrical circuits in the brain don't quite, or the chemical balance in the brain, or whatever it is, as I say, I'm a layperson, but when that gets an imbalance, then everything just shifts, and it just doesn't work in the normal way. And that's, I mean, I remember seeing somebody, I was in the synagogue once, during a prayer session, and a guy just walked in stark naked into the synagogue. And it just blew my mind. And I discovered afterwards that this guy suffered from bipolar. Inhibitions just completely just go out of the window. And it's you know, I don't know. Sorry, I'm just reading Jimmy's comment there. Yeah, definitely. The medications are absolutely paramount. Well, I hope what I've said, Jimmy, hasn't in any way upset you. I've tried to just say it as I've sort of witnessed it, not as somebody who's got experience of it. But certainly the people that I know who have it, the medications are absolutely paramount. The times that they haven't taken the medication, and part of the disorder, from what I've seen, is that it convinces the person that they're fantastic and they're absolutely tickety-boo and they don't need the medication. They almost become supernatural and superpowers, and they convince themselves that they're absolutely spot on normal, and they don't take the medication, and then it just spirals and it goes into a downward spiral and gets worse and worse and worse. So I've got a fairly close relationship with some people who have bipolar, so it's not like I'm speaking about it from a distance. Whilst I don't have medical knowledge of it, certainly I've witnessed it quite close at hand. And it was when those times when this guy hadn't taken his meds that things got really out of hand. I remember quite a few times I had to take him to our local doctor, who was an amazing guy, an absolute angel, and in a bind he would let you go to his house. And I remember it was the middle of a festival, and I managed to take him over to the doctor. The doctor gave him a few shots, and you know, he calmed down. He got absolutely ravenous, starving hungry, and the doctor, being an absolute angel that he was, they were in the middle of eating their dinner or whatever it was. He set him on the side, gave him a huge bowl of food, some chicken and potatoes, a full plate of food, and he just went through it in a very, he made short order of that plate of food, but he was calm and he was able to go home. But medications, absolutely. Hi Eric, how you doing? Yeah, that's life. That is life. We've all got our little foibles and medical issues to deal with. As you get older, they're a greater part of your life, generally speaking. Well, it's amazing that this university teacher is able to really focus and do his job, Hector. All the best, Steph. Thank you very much. You're not too bad yourself. Very talented young lady. We'll have to get in touch at some point. Send you some backies. All right, fair enough. 43 is the spring. You're a little young chicken. Sweet chicken. You're a baby. An absolute baby, Steph. You're young. Make the most of it. I'm only 6 years older than you. So we're not that far off, in truth. Oh dear. What's the time? It's 2 AM, people. Earlier on, when I was on Chad's live, I said I'm not sure I'm actually going to go on live tonight. I really wasn't feeling it tonight. I'm out of gas. Alright, I think I'm going to have to light up a bowl of something that I like rather than granny pants. You missed that earlier on, Eric. We had a little smoke with Ben of some bosun plug, and I've had to fumigate the little office here. As soon as I lit up, there was a queue of grannies knocking on my door. All wanting their pants back. And a good job too, Harriet. That's Granny Pants Extraordinaire. It's a Lakeland. Yeah, these jars are pretty cool. I just bought them the other day. I bought they were, I think, £6 for 6, so roughly £1 each, which is really good. They're a good size, perfect for 50 grams for a tin. Just the right size for a tin, and the labels. They come in. They're kind of a sort of loosely sold, the tobaccos, and I just didn't want them to dry out before they get sent over to the US. So I just jarred them up, and I peeled off the stickers, and they peeled off very nicely. And yes, they do fit very well. Happy pills, yeah, I've heard that before, yeah. No, not all Gauth Hagath blends are Lakelands, but a lot of them are. The nicotine ratio is bigger in cigarettes. I'm not sure that that's true, Mohammed. I think if you were to inhale pipe tobacco, you may feel otherwise. These jars are a non-brand from Hobbycraft. It's a chain here in the UK. I don't know if it's anywhere else in Europe or America, but it's a chain here where you can buy all types of Hobbycraft, kitchen stuff and so on. And this is their own brand. They probably get it from China or something like that. And they They come in a pack of 6 like that. No, it was from Lakeland, sorry. Lakeland, not Hobbycraft. Lakeland, which is the same kind of idea though. It's but it's not Hobbycraft, it's all kitchenware. But it's, you know, real, it's specifically, it's dedicated to kitchenware. Happy-go-lucky Piper, what are you doing up at 4 o'clock in the morning? Izzy? Shavua Tov. You would like to reply and write through an interpreter, Mohammed. Why? You seem to be doing just fine. Little baby Happy woke up. Aww. It's very nice of you to give your wife the night off. L'chaim, as Izzy would say. Hey, right on the button, 2 AM on the patio. It's 2:04 here in the UK, so perfectly timed there. Onion. I still didn't get the story why you're called Onion. I remember asking it last time and I didn't see the answer. Yeah, I did reply, Mohammed. Hey, Dublin. Well, the chat's been quite serious up to now. So let's perhaps take it on to a slightly lighter note. Get back to talking tobacco. So, Hector said before, straight Virginia we should go for next. Anything in particular? I'm not sure that I'll have it, but I could certainly take some suggestions. We're going to Dublin, Eric. Ooh. Full Virginia flake, that's a good call. Lucky you, Eric. My mother-in-law's from Ireland. So she is. She's Irish. Best brown, we could do that. But full Virginia flake is calling to me a little bit more strongly. Well, I'm not stopping you, Eric. Get some if you want some. Well, here's the rest of the bosun plug, and you know where that's going, right? That's right, straight in the bin. Ben, if you're watching, ooh, you won't be happy. Right, let's see if we can dig out some full Virginia flake. Bear with. Oh dear. It's the problem with having all these jars on my shelf. It's like, you touch one and the whole lot comes down. Anyway, we've got the full Virginia flake. This is from January 18. So it's been there for a year, which is cool. And that was from GQ Tobaccos. Nice Kilner jar with a Union Jack on the top. Sweet. Lots of crystals on the tobacco, like really fine crystals. I don't know if you can catch that little glinting there. No, you didn't tell me that. I don't know what the Spanish flag looks like, to be honest. Oh, sorry, not Spanish, it's, what is it? The Basque one, yeah. I don't know what it looks like. I said something naughty there, didn't I? When I said the Spanish flag. You were offended, weren't you? I must know my politics better. Right, there it is. Well, by a quick Google search, it's a combination of the Scottish and the English flag. The Scottish flag being blue background with an X-shaped satire, as it's called, and of course the St George's Cross, the red cross. Apparently that's what it is. It's a blend of the two. Wales? Where's that? Never heard of it. Meh. this is almost ready to smoke. Knoxville, Tennessee. Oh, Eric, you would have been proud of Chad Yardism earlier on. He did an absolute spot-on impression of Art, Pipes and Spirits. Go back on his live. Yeah, he did. I don't know if he's still live, is he? No, he's not live anymore. Yeah, definitely have a listen to it, Eric. Better than yours any day. We were talking about coffee slurpers and snorters and snifflers, people who sniffle and snort on their YouTube presentations. Chad Yardism. He did an impression of Art. You know Yardism? Chad Yardborough? Seriously, you don't know Yardism? Are you having me on? Chad Yardborough, and his channel is called Yardism. I'm surprised that you haven't met him up to now. He's one of the guys. The moisture content is pretty good. I'm about to load up. Just going to decide which bowl to go for, which pipe to go for. I think we're going to go for the Ascorti. Uh-oh. I'm going to load that up with some filters. I'm drinking tea at the moment, some Earl Grey. What did I miss there between Cherry and Harriet? Let me dial back. You mean you actually pose without your red peak cap, Cherry? Yes, this is Samuel Go with full Virginia flake. The tax-free option on the Danish pipe shop. I think if it's outside of the EU, then you don't pay the tax. with a cherry on top. How did you come up with that name, by the way, Cherry? The idea of using that cap, or did the cap come first? Chicken and eggs. Which came first, the name or the cap? Eric was looking for Yardism's channel. He hasn't met Chad. It's a good job you weren't here before, Ben. Oh, that's so romantic, Cherry. Well, I kind of let my bowl of granny pants die off, and what was left on the tray got dumped in the bin. And now we're smoking some full Virginia flake in the Escorty. And being a bit of a pole dance with a cherry on top. That is sacrilege for Ben, absolutely. It was only the dregs. Yeah. Appreciate all your comments, Cherry, on the videos. And the drive time videos. You heard the drawers are dropping. Make of that what you will. Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I mentioned it earlier on Chad's live. It's usually I feed off what I hear on the radio. I don't deliberately look for contentious issues, but I just, you know, when I listen to the radio, I hear a news item, and it kind of sets my wheels in motion, my cogs in my brain going, and I just share it. I'm not offering a particular opinion, just offering usually both sides of a story. I'm just curious to explore them. What, the single parenting one? Risque is an interesting word to use. How so? That's the best way, have it. Whenever you talk about a subject of any nature, you're always going to have two sides to the argument, and you're always going to have people on both sides. and especially something like, I don't know about risque, but certainly contentious and controversial. Yes, the last particular topic about single parents was bound to elicit responses on both camps, from both camps. Cherry on top, for instance, if I remember his comment accurately, he was talking about looking at the cause of single parenting and poverty, rather than looking at the consequences and trying to deal with the consequences. Better be preventative and deal with the cause. But it's. I'm not so sure that's necessarily the case. I'm not so sure that poverty is the one and only main contributory factor to these kind of situations. I think there's a lot of cultural issues at hand. Certainly in the Western world, it seems it's become much more acceptable, the whole concept of single-parent families. I've got nothing against single-parent families on a personal level. The main thrust of my argument was whether or not, where people are deliberately exploiting the system and having children to aid that exploitation, and that was the question that I was exploring, not coming to any conclusions, but just exploring. Here it is. And Chad was saying earlier on that absolutely it's the kids you feel sorry for, Ben, but some people will argue that single parent families do just fine and therefore don't get involved. It's none of our business. And that may well be true, but I was curious as to what the statistics would bear out. Chad was telling me that he'd obviously done some homework on it, and he was saying that if you do look in prisons, which was something which I was thinking about, but I didn't have the stats to hand, that a big percentage of those people will have resulted from single-parent families. That's not to say that it was anybody's fault, it's just a fact. There was quite a few comments on that video about gay couples and adopting a child, and people thought that wasn't quite right because you didn't have the balance of a male-female parent, which is, again, this is going to be very, very contentious in this day and age. But people were quite forthright about their opinions about that. Not everyone is suited for parenting, absolutely. The thing is that sometimes when you can have a husband and wife in a traditional, in inverted commas, family unit, and the male sort of the influence in the family is not a good influence. So in that case, sometimes you'd be better off with a single parent, with the mother. Certainly in my particular family, my wife brings equilibrium and organization and level-headedness, whereas I, as a man, I'm not saying that I'm not those things, but certainly she will be more, she'll bring sensibility to a lot of situations, and sometimes it'll work vice versa. But generally speaking, you need that balance. Hi, Dad. Thanks for joining. So what are you saying, Hector? Let me just get that straight. So in favour of parenting license, both single or couples. Who's going to govern that, and who's going to set the parameters? People are not qualified. It's an argument which you can't really get an answer to, because in this day and age there are so many family setups which are just all over the place. Well, certainly in the UK, the people who govern are not necessarily those who behave in any better way than the average person on the street, and often much worse. It's very hard to say. I mean, to make a statement, bullies are a result of bad parenting. Certainly, children will be influenced by their parents, and if the parents bully each other, then they're going to learn from that. But it's very hard to generalize. I think in this day and age, there is so much influence out there. We're so exposed to 1,000,001 different influences in our lives. I feel for the children of this generation. I really do. The parents, in some ways, although I'm religious, in every sort of cultural sect, you have extremes and you have middle of the road, in inverted commas, and then you have those who are less observant, and just obviously, being religious myself, I'm going to be, to some extent, biased. But even if I were to place myself in a position where I was an atheist, I would still say that to belong to some form of organized way of life, let's not call it religion for now, but to belong to some organized way of life is extremely important. That's not to say that somebody who's an atheist can't lead a good life, but, and I guess I have laws of the land to give you some kind of structure, but I think it's so important to have some kind of structure. The type of, when we look at the generation today, I'm just considering whether to actually continue with what I'm saying. Let me put it like this. The term normal has been stretched so much generation that I think it's almost impossible for kids to know what they're about, and therefore the community, as Izzy puts it, or any kind of cultural structure is so important, so that kids can just get their heads around having some kind of identity, some kind of purpose, some kind of understanding of what they are and who they are. It's the and again, I'm not here to judge anybody else, and I only myself. But it's just it's gotten out of hand, and it's not so much, if people have a different lifestyle, that's fine, that's up to them, no problem. But this whole drive for people to scream from the top of their voices about who and what they are and what you should and shouldn't be, it's just gone too far. Political correctness has gone crazy, gone absolutely crazy. SJW, what does that mean? All right, okay, yeah. That's gone absolutely crazy. Well, I think that's a different point, Ben. That's it's true as well, and I'm guilty of that. We all have our little knickknacks around us. Pad and Tad is a good example of us not making do with the best with what we have and wanting more the whole time. I'm the first to admit it. Yeah, 100%, Ben. I agree with that entirely. I wish I could do it more myself. But I think that's certainly, if we were all able to do that, we would be better people, and perhaps would learn to just focus on ourselves rather than on other people, as Cherry is talking about having humility and empathy and respect. And to that end, as I say, I personally don't have any personal axe to grind with anybody who has whatever lifestyle they choose. But I don't like the idea of people screaming about it from the top of a building and saying that you have to recognize. Well, recognize is wrong, because we do recognize, but it's just that the whole focus of everything becomes alternative lifestyles, for instance, where it's just, that's all there is. And political correctness is a perfect example of that. It's just gone out of hand. And I think that the family unit has also suffered terribly over the generations. Perfect timing there, Jerry. Perfect timing. I think the family unit has suffered in a big way, and those traditional sort of beliefs of do unto others as you would have done to yourself, and treat others as you would treat yourself, those kind of mottos and guidelines with which to lead your life, to a large extent, has gone out of the window. Very nicely put, Meeks. Very nicely put. Oh yes, Tree. Oh yes, parenting is whew. Hindsight is a wonderful thing. If only we had it in advance. When you watch your kids grow up, well, put it this way, when I watch my kids grow up, I don't want to impose my own experience on other people, but cheers, Cherry, have a good one. When I have kids ranging from the age of 5 to 26, and I have a couple of grandkids, and they each have grown up in their own way and continue to grow up in their own way and go in different directions in life. And sometimes I beat myself up about the ones who perhaps haven't gone in a direction which perhaps could have been better, but I suppose once they're adults, it's not really my business. They go whichever way they see fit, and that's fine. But I sometimes look back at the way some of my kids have grown up, and as I say, I beat myself up about it. Why didn't I do it this way or do it that way as a parent? And you kind of do sort of judge yourself as to how well you've done with this one and how well you've done with that one. But in truth, you know, all kids will go whichever way they're going, but you do have an influence. There's no question about it. And I do sometimes think that I could have had a better influence on this one or that one, and I'm happy perhaps with how this one turned out. Obviously you get to a stage where you can't really say you're either happy or unhappy. They're different human beings, and you know, each child has their own interests, and you know, you can't impose your own standards, if you like, on everybody else. But when you're bringing up children, up to a certain point, they are your responsibility. And as Tree said, being a parent is the hardest job of all. And parenting is guidance, but it's, I think, more importantly, it's setting an example. I think that the biggest, most significant responsibility and most significant influence a parent is going to have is by the way they themselves act in their lives, with their partner, and in their business world, in their ethics, and in their integrity, and how children see that you keep your word, and that your word means something, or that you have integrity in business. You don't slouch around, and you work in order to feed the family and put a roof over their head. I think that's, for me, that's the biggest influence on a child, is what they just look at what the parents do. Up until a certain age, the mother and father are the be-all and end-all of this child's life. They look up to their parents as God. You know, everything that their parents do is perfect. I mean, you hope to have that kind of relationship. And you do notice that once you get past a certain age, the children start to think for themselves, and a lot of times your kids will think that they can do things better than you, and they're already starting to give you advice on how to do things. And you certainly see that on a very superficial level with, say, for instance, technology. Your children grow up in a technological age which is more advanced to what it was when you were growing up, and they'll say, no, this is the best way to do this, or that's the best way to do this, and sometimes they're right, and that's fine. Yeah, absolutely, Quaker. I can't argue with that. As I said, I presented both sides of the argument. I don't have a definitive answer to that. I certainly know, as you say, single parents and non-single parents doing very, very well, generally speaking. But the statistics seem to bear out, although I haven't got anything definitive, it's just hearsay, but the statistics that I've heard about certainly seem to indicate that traditional, in inverted commas, families seem to do better. Nice one, Joe. So I guess your kids are very cold most of the time. Wow, it's 2:45. I didn't realise how late it was. Well, considering I had no intention of doing a live tonight at all, it seems to have gone on for a long time. Being cold builds character. Right, time to just clean up some pipes. Maybe I'll take a few more drags from this full Virginia flake. One of the things certainly that I've learnt by having kids who have gone in a variety of directions is that you have to love your children unconditionally. And that sounds like a simple statement to make. But sometimes when you've got a child who I wouldn't say rebels, but certainly doesn't go in the direction that you expect, sometimes you could feel that you've failed, and that sometimes can bring up some kind of negative feeling sometimes. And that's one thing I've learnt, is to love my kids unconditionally, and I say that at least with a clear conscience. And that's really, really important, because if you don't, then that's what creates barriers in relationships. There it is, tree. Yeah, it's Jack Daniels. It's a brass Zippo with a pipe insert. I was struggling with this to get a decent flame, but now it seems to be doing very well. Listen, with parenting, you just have to try your best and hope that you do the best, and you just hope that when your kids grow up and they're older, that they'll still be around to look after you when you're sitting in your wheelchair. That's very interesting, Fireplug, because sometimes it's your relationship with your partner. Again, I'm not talking about your particular case because I have no idea about your case, but oftentimes it's the relationship between the two partners that's actually getting in the way of how to agree on how to bring up the child, rather than it actually being based on solid arguments. It's more about the argument between the two parents rather than the argument of the subject at hand of how to raise the child on a particular topic. Harriet, yeah, I didn't use, I had the Zippo a long time, but I didn't really use it very much. I also couldn't stand the taste of that until somebody told me to buy the original Zippo fluid rather than the branded stuff. And I use this one. It's called Zippo Premium Lighter Fluid, low odor. Yeah, there you go. And although it's kind of there right initially when you open the lighter, when you lift the lid, but the odor is there very slightly, but it's really not an issue. Why would that be offensive? Not offensive in any way. It's just that the live stream we get to do once a week, and in the morning, it's obviously you can't have a conversation. It's just a one-way stream, but it's just there. You know, it's just something. I like the idea of opening up a topic for discussion. I do find though, Ben, that when I'm talking live, you kind of have to choose your words carefully because you've got people at the other end and you don't want to offend people. At the same time, you want to get your point across. So it's a bit of a balancing act, like everything in life, I guess. Oh, too many double negatives there. Is never ill-advised. So you're saying it's a good thing to be careful? Absolutely. Silence is a virtue. And if you have to say something, just make sure it's sensible. That's why even in the lives, I'm often really very quiet as I'm mulling things over in my mind. You know, I don't want my videos to be like some videos out there where people are just going on and on saying things because they have to say something. And I want to mean what I say. I'm conscious of that there's potentially a lot of people listening to it. And I want to be responsible with what I say. I'd rather have silence than say something that I might regret. Very good, Artful. Oh yeah, I mean, Hector, absolutely. I mean, if you listen to the video that I put out on, I think it was Friday, there's no question, you know, it wasn't a criticism in any way, shape or form. It was opening up the question, but I started off right at the top of the video. The introduction to the video was that I've full praise for single-parent families who result from, whether it's a divorce or a separation or whatever it might be, whether it's the father or the mother, it doesn't make a difference. Anybody who raises a child and is in a situation where, and often will be a very challenging situation, full kudos to them. You know, the highest praise goes to them, and I've got absolutely no reservation whatsoever in saying that. The question that I asked was about single-parent families by choice, elective single parenting, where people have had a child on their own for a reason, and that for a financial reason, for financial gain. And again, I wasn't even coming to a conclusion. I wasn't criticizing them either. I was asking the question and giving both sides of that argument. I think somebody, though, the obvious reaction that I had initially, and again, I'm not coming to a conclusion, but the reaction that I had initially was that a person who is divisive enough to have a child so that they can qualify for a benefit of some kind, for a financial benefit or accommodation, I suppose you'd have to ask yourself, you know, what kind of desperate situation they were in order to push them into that. Yes, I think that's where Cherry on Top was coming from in his comment, to some extent anyway. But as I say, there's two sides to those kind of questions, and you can't have a definitive answer, I don't think, because every single situation, there'll always be a contributory factor to it which would have led up to that point. So I think making a blanket statement about these things is futile. You can ask the question, you can look at the various sides to the argument, but to say to give a blanket statement and say that all single parent families are good or all single parent families are bad is a waste of time. Hi Ken. Yep, yes, Quaker, that's exactly what I was saying. I was going to say, Tree, I got sidetracked. I was going to say that, firstly, Tree, it's a very brave thing for you to say that. It's a brave thing to say, and to acknowledge it and recognize it. That in itself is a huge step. And I'm sure that your children will appreciate that. At least I hope they will. A very practical solution, Izzy. Not sure I would do that though. Although some of my kids don't have laces in their shoes. A mouthful of tobacco juice. Why is it important to you that he wears laced up shoes? Or is it that he wants to wear them but doesn't want to do the laces up? Maybe it's a kid's fashion thing. Like wearing your trousers underneath your backside. We're putting the world to rights here, guys. People talk about a crack epidemic. There's one right there. Take care, Hector. Just entertaining myself. Well, if he's doing it just to annoy you, then you need to ignore it. Simple as. Cheers, Izzy. I'm wondering myself, Ken, what I'm smoking tonight. And right now, I'm smoking some full Virginia flake. Cheers, curmudgeon. Pull up your granny pants, people, and cover up that crack. That's the crack epidemic. Believe it or not, I tried Nightcap for the first time just a few weeks ago, and I put a couple of tins away in the cellar. I really enjoyed it, actually. It was one of those blends which I felt intimidated by, because when I first started smoking a pipe, I watched reviews of it and videos of it, and people always said it was really strong, and that's why it's called Nightcap, because it's one to have just before you go to bed, because there's a big nick hit. But I think over the years I've become a little bit tolerant to nicotine, and when I smoked it, I didn't get any nick hit at all, and I really enjoyed it. But although I'm smoking a little bit more Latakia than I was, let's say a couple of months ago, I'm still not smoking it on a regular basis. And whilst I was completely on Latakia for about a year, I'm still hardly smoking it. Yeah, it didn't seem strong when I smoked it, but I had the impression that it was from other people's reviews. It just goes to show you that reviews are very subjective. Whereabouts is that, Jim? APA? I haven't tried Bold Kentucky yet. Well, you're very lucky to have found Navy rolls. I think that our local shop still has some, but you can't get them online anymore here in the UK. Yes, Tree, I would agree with you on that. Yeah, it certainly seems that the best way to get esoterica blends is at B&Ms, and you will find the more esoteric, for want of a better word, esoterica blends will be available. But Penzance and Stonehaven, very unlikely to find in your local B&M, but you will find the Dorchester's and the Dunbars sometimes, and So to Bed, Margate, yeah. It's just those two really that are a lot harder to find. Penzance and Stonehaven. They usually get snapped up as soon as the B&Ms get them. They've already got a queue of people waiting. They're regulars. No, I have thought about it. I will tell you that. and I have spoken to the Germains more than once, and I've asked them about the possibility of buying it direct from them, and they wouldn't sell it. They wouldn't sell any of the Esoterica blends direct. Then, you know what? Generally speaking, I would agree with you. I wouldn't have said that 3 years ago, but today I definitely agree with you. I don't pursue them anymore. If some Penzance lands in my lap, I'll definitely take it. Stonehaven I'm not really too fussed about anymore, because Rich Dark Flake is 99% the same, and it's freely available here in the UK. Penzance, it's very nice, but it is very nice. It's a lovely Balkan blend, but is it something so different from anything else that makes it have that legendary status? I used to think that, but I don't think that anymore. Hey Josh, still here? Lurking in the background there? Or have you been and gone? And come back? Izzy, aren't you teaching tomorrow? Or later today, I should say. Well, Meeks, I can tell you what I did with Boswell's. With Boswell's, when I first discovered their pipes, I was buying their pipes quite regularly, and I was buying their cigars quite regularly. So, as a good customer, they would, generally speaking, set aside stuff for me. And since I went over to 9mm pipes, and they don't do any 9mm pipes, so I don't buy their pipes. I bought maybe one in the last 2 years. So when I ask them now, they don't say anything. I mean, they'll say they'll try and whatever, but so far they haven't come up with anything. Not for a long time. And I can understand it. It may not feel nice, but I suppose they have to look after their regular customers. And since I'm no longer a regular customer, they don't look after me. Well, they look after me when I buy stuff. I don't mean that they don't look after me. They're good. They're a fantastic shop, don't get me wrong. But in terms of holding on to stuff for me, that's... and I don't expect it either, you know. They have no reason to. I'm not going to be buying loads of pipes from them. And they have no reason to, other than me being a customer. And if I was turning up in their shop, I may well find some of those blends. But for them to hold it and then to have to send it abroad, I don't expect it. What's big dark wooden thing? Good night, Dubs. The impression that I've gotten, although I've got no reason to believe it, but the impression I've gotten is that it's about 4 or 5 drops a year, but I don't know for sure. What's a big dark wooden thing next to the tan ashtray? Are you talking about this thing here? This is actually not wooden. This is a lighter. It's a tabletop jet lighter. It's actually extremely cheap. I think it was about £30. I bought that in J. Fox's, and it is quite a neat lighter. It's a jet lighter, but you can adjust it, and you can turn it into a soft flame as well, and you can lock it so it stays on. It does have quite a lot of bits to it in terms of what you can do. It's got a big reservoir as well, so you fill it, it lasts for a long time. Yeah, it does look fancy indeed, and it behaves pretty well. Izzy, thank you very much. I'm delighted that you were able to join. I know you find it difficult from time to time, so thank you very much. Have a good week, Shavua Tov, and we will be in touch. I think this is as good a time as any to say goodnight. We are almost 3 hours, which, as I said, considering I wasn't going to be on tonight, pretty good going, so thank you all, and thank you for staying with me. It was indeed a very interesting discussion. Generally on the lives, I don't usually get into these kind of discussions, but it was really interesting. And I'm happy to get into that in the future as well, if that's of interest. And if you want to bring up any topics on future Saturday nights, by all means, feel free to do so. Doesn't always have to be tobacco related. So, I will say goodnight to Harriet, Road, Glide, Sally, Jim, Hugh, Lurking Hugh says goodnight. Hi Hugh, thank you for joining. PA Piper, Joe Fish, Happy Go Lucky Piper, Meeks, Ken, The Artful Codger, Jim, Pipe Tree, Smoking Grandpa Bones, Crazed Night, PA Piper, Steam Gent. And everybody else. Thank you very much for joining. Eric, thank you. I'm still waiting, Eric. Told you it wouldn't be easy. Have a wonderful week. Have an enjoyable week. Have a successful week. Have a healthy week. A smoky week. And above all, a serene week. Catch you on the